Well, my name is Lorrie Kevern. Most people know me as Miss Lorrie, at least my young students. And the name of my business is Dutch Masters Fine Art Academy. And the location is Studio at Main, 4886 Main Street, Yorba Linda, 92886 in California. Short. It started with my parents acknowledging that I had that, first of all. They saw that I could draw, and they were super excited. And I was like, whoa, okay, I guess I can do this. And it began with an inked clown that I made when I was 10 years old. And then from there, I grew up, and about age 18, when we had moved from New York to California, and my dad chose the Yorba Linda area, there was a famous, I want to say famous, to us she was famous. She was a local artist that was amazing. Her name was Melba Winston, and my mom and dad had seen her work and loved her work, actually purchased a piece or two, and they said, would you be interested in teaching our daughter? And at first I was like, well, painting, because it's very different than illustrating and drawing. And it's a little daunting, especially back then, because she did Dutch Master Fine Oil layering, which was very labor intensive. And the average painting would take 9 months to about a year and a half to complete, because you'd wait for each layer to dry. And then, but I got entranced by watching her, seeing her patience, kind of getting to know her. She mentored me, and I went on to art school. I was in college, and did not enjoy the experiences there very much, to be frank. But I, endured a lot of it, and I'm glad I did. But I always would return back to that experience, because she didn't have her back to me. This was before YouTube and all the cool ways to learn. There was not much back then. Also, the oil paint was a bit toxic. So I put it aside, though, when I got married, and I was painting for about 3 years. And my parents were really sad that I kind of stopped, but I did take a break to raise my family. In that time, science was making remarkable changes, and artists were doing a lot. Like Bob Ross was bringing in the joy of painting and coming up with his own materials. Jerry Arnell and others were doing a lot of research to make paint better. And then Liquitex, Golden, and Grumbacher, who sponsored me when I worked for Michaels, they really brought acrylics into their own, especially I'd say Liquitex and Golden. And if you do the research, they did 50 years of intensive research from, I want to say, the Jackson Pollock era in the 50s forward. So anyway, really interesting stuff. And I always looked down on acrylic until I needed a job and my kids grew up. And I was praying one day, God, what do you want me to do? I'm a Christian, and I really love sharing Jesus and praying with people, but I also needed a job, and I was like, what should I do, God? Should I go into church work? What do you want me to do? And I distinctly felt impressed it was time to paint. And I was like, I forgot about that. And it was really exciting, because the next day I had been teaching calligraphy at Michaels. The manager came up to me and offered me a job and said, we need somebody to run, we need a manager. I forget what the kind of manager was, but we need somebody to run our fine art program, and if you'd be interested in that. And I go, what is it? It's a painting program sponsored by Grumbacher, and you have to pass the test, and then you'll be certified. So I did, and that began a journey of just kind of meeting people at Michaels, and every artist and every crafty person goes there to get, their materials. And I met Disney artists, I met all kinds of artists there. It was a blast. And then I learned how retail works, which was interesting. At one point, I became #1 in America and Canada for the largest level of classes over there. And that just blew me away. I was amazed, and I had to become just a straight-up teacher, no longer working on the floor, to handle all the students that I believe God brought me. I just had so much fun with people, and I kind of took the program that was a very classical program and started introducing these other things, and I began to outgrow it, literally. I couldn't kind of stay with it. They needed it to be a little more contained. And I got offered by another artist who had kind of wandered into Michael's, Ina Pankratova, if I'd like to be her art director on Main Street. She was from Russia. And I said, well, I'll check you out, you know. So I came in here, and it was all the Russians were having, the Russians came to Yorba Linda. I loved it. It was such a cultural experience for me. And then to see her mentor's work, I will not do it justice if I try to say it, but she's the famous artist. She's shown in the Louvre, it's Grigorieva Pankratova. Anyway, she mentored Ina. And Ina got into florals, and I can show you those over there if you're interested. But I helped feature her work, and I was excited to be an art director. I had never had been one. So for a gallery, and it lasted about a year here. She needed to move on to a more suitable place, unfortunately. She had to kind of grow more down in Palm Springs and Laguna. So, but I was thinking, what a cool location for a studio, and I had prayed about it, and some other artists thought the same and joined me after she left. And we began to do each kind of follow our own paths under one roof, which was really cool. And their names are Sandy, Bev, and Karen. And they were great to work with. And then one by one, they kind of left and found those paths in different ways. And I got to grow and expand. And I had a vision for doing a school and working with artists, and so I work with age 7 to 100. You know, I love working with almost every age.